Hi, Tara Boston-Kemper here, and I am going to talk with you about a really common question that people have whenever they come in or whenever they're seeking out services for counseling or therapy. That question is, will this work for me? Will counseling work for me? Will therapy work for me? Is this going to be effective? Will it work for my situation? Will it work with my specific issue? It's a variation of the same question. Basically, is this thing going to help me to feel better? I mean, that's ultimately what people are wanting. Or is this going to be a giant waste of my time? It's like $1 million question, right? So there are a few key things that can help you figure out whether or not counseling will be helpful for you. And before then, let me just say who I am. That might be helpful too in this specific situation. So my name is Tara Boston-Kemper. I am the owner of the Counseling Hub. I'm also a practicing therapist with the Counseling Hub, and we are a group counseling practice located in Columbia, Missouri. I specialize in couples. I do a lot with conflict. I work with a lot of people who are on the brink of divorce, like really struggling in some way. That's my favorite population, who are at the very end of their tether. I love what I do. I love what I do, period. I was gonna say it's hard, but it can be difficult, it can be challenging, not like emotionally challenging necessarily, but it's amazing. It's amazing work. So that aside, let's get to the nitty gritty. Here is the long and short answer is maybe counseling will be helpful for you. Here's what we know about counseling. Getting counseling is more helpful than not getting counseling. That sounds really basic and obvious, but it is supported by research, more than one study. This has been replicated. So overall, counseling is more effective than no counseling. And in general, there's not a specific type of counseling that's the most effective. I would argue and say that for couples, it's a little bit different because there are very clear outcomes like divorce, something like that, you know, or like relationship satisfaction, you know, period, like very key markers for what's successful versus not. But whenever you're comparing like different approaches to individual counseling / therapy, you're not seeing that significant of a difference in general. There's nuance to that, but for the sake of right now, just in general, you're not seeing that much of a difference between something like a cognitive behavioral approach versus like an existential approach. So these are two very different approaches in working with people. So my point in saying that is that counseling can be effective, and getting counseling is better for people in general than not getting any. With that said, what are the key pieces to successful counseling, to successful therapy? And successful is basically what you deem as successful. I mean, it's not like your therapist is going to say to you, successful is you feeling this way, or you doing this thing, or change your life. You know, it's basically whatever it is that you define it as. Whatever it is that you define it as. There we go. That's what successful is. One of the most important factors, if not the most important factor, if I'm being completely honest, this is a big freaking deal. It's your relationship with your clinician. And again, that sounds really basic and really obvious. Like, well, duh, Tara, of course I need to like my counselor. No, I don't think you understand. Like, this is the significant factor. This accounts for the vast majority of the success in therapy is not due to, I mean, you have to do the work, obviously, but is tied to your relationship with your clinician. Super interesting little side factoid. The same holds true for medication. There's a bunch of research to say that if you don't trust your medical provider, medication is less effective. Crazy. That's crazy. I think that's so fascinating. It's really just a testament to the significance of the relationship. And when you're going in for counseling, here's what you want to get out of, well, I don't know about you, but here's what I want you to get out of a relationship with your clinician. Number one, you're looking for somebody that, multiple things, but we'll start with two. First of all, this is what I like to tell people, you got to give it 3 sessions. You have to get 3 sessions, give it 3 sessions to really get a sense of who your clinician is. Because the reality is, like, meeting a therapist or meeting a counselor, meeting your clinician, a psychologist, something like that, is the equivalent to speed dating. You're going on a blind date. You don't know this person that you're going to meet up with. You don't know who they are. You don't know anything about them. You don't know how they show up. You don't know if you are going to like be on the same page with jokes or stories, or how comfortable are you going to feel, or is this something that like you hit it off right away and it's off to the races, or it takes a couple of sessions before you really like get a sense of, oh, I can relax into this. This is nice. I really like this person. Let's see where this goes. It's not the same thing. Obviously, you're not going to be dating your counselor. And if you are, then that's a complete ethical breach on your counselor's end. But you are going to be getting to know your counselor, and they're also going to be getting to know you. So I like to tell people, give it 3 sessions to really get a sense of how you feel about your clinician. The first couple sessions are really just about data, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's information gathering. We're getting to know each other. I'm getting to know you. I'm having a, we call it conceptualizing. We're like, have this conceptual map and like working theories about people as we're working with them. And so we're getting all this information that's filtering through these conceptual lenses and maps to try to make sense of what's going on with you and what you're here for and how we can best help, if at all. If we need a referral system, if we need to collaborate, if, you know, there's so many factors that are going, like streaming through our minds at any given point. So 3 sessions. It's usually by session 3 that people really, really have a sense of, yeah, this is going to work, or no, this is not going to work. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The second thing is what I want for people, how I want them to feel. I think it's super important. Understood. I want my clients, I want for people who are going to seek out services to feel really deeply understood by their clinician. I want them to feel empowered and have autonomy, so you get to be the decision maker in this whole experience. I want them to feel really seen, really heard. I want them to feel validated. I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel soothed, not like you might be tearful. I'm not gonna sit next to you and like stroke your head and tell you, it's okay, dear, it's okay. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not, I guess in a way that's like soothing, but that'd be like a mother hen soothing or something like that. But no, I'm talking about soothing in the way that we do hard work and then we put the pieces back together before you leave. And so you over time learn, I can do the damn thing. I can do this hard work, and then I can gather myself, and then I can make sense of what I'm doing, and then I can walk out and maybe feel a little bit raw for the rest of the day, potentially the next day, but then I feel good. Like I've learned about myself and I've grown, and wow, I did it. And, you know, so it all sort of ties back in with that empowerment piece too. So those are really important pieces. If you don't feel that way, or if you show up in session and your counselor is telling you specifically what to do, or diminishing what you're saying, or telling you that you're wrong, or, you know, you share a story and you say, I felt really, really powerless. And they say, well, don't think about it that way. Just think about it like this. I'm done at that point. I'm like, no, I'm good. See ya. Like, I'll just go, I have to move on, you know? So those are really important pieces for people. And I'm talking about them because they are all factored into your success in therapy and counseling, whether or not it's going to work for you. These things need to be in place. And so when I say like maybe, it's not an easy answer like, yes, it's gonna work. I don't know. I don't know you. I don't know your situation. You don't know your counselor yet. And if you're working with me, you don't even know me yet. And we're just like talking, and we're not even talking right now. I'm literally talking at, you know, a camera, and then you're watching later and thinking, oh, maybe I'd like her, or I can't stand her. I would hate to have her as a clinician. I mean, regardless, this isn't dynamic is what I'm trying to say. And I'm totally off point right now. But the relationship piece is a huge component of, and with the relationship, again, it's a feeling seen and heard and validated and understood and safe and soothed. Like that feeds into your relationship. And the relationship you have with your clinician is a huge factor in your success in counseling and therapy and whether or not it's effective and helpful for you. Last thing, and then I'm done. Two things, sorry. I had to make notes for myself so I didn't forget. 2 more things. 1, you want your therapist or your clinician to have a bigger working model of what's going on than you do. So if you come in and you say, hey, doc, I have anxiety. Doc, I'm just using that colloquially. Hey, I have anxiety, help. And your counselor says, oh my gosh, well, what's anxiety? you need to leave. I really doubt your counselor would say that, for the record, but if that ever happened, just leave. That's not even worth your time. Ideally, your counselor says, cool, anxiety. And then right away, that word triggers a series of research-based things they know about anxiety. So as anxiety relates to depression, as it relates to genetics and hereditary, what is that word? How hereditary it is. Is that the right word? I'm losing my mind over here. You might think about like existential anxiety. You might start thinking about like panic disorder and OCD type things. Is this showing up in your body? Is it showing up more in your mind? Is it like racing thoughts, or is it like a palpable energy in your system? You know, is it something like your chest feels heavy and your breathing is shallow? Is it something, you know, is it related to nutrition? Is there any exercise that's in your life? You know, are there any sorts of like meditations that you do? What sort of self-care stuff do you do? Boom, like there's a bunch of other thoughts that now, you know, if anxiety is the hub, then your counselor has a bunch of spokes and offshoots that are related to anxiety that you may know these things and you may not. And so most people, I think, don't. They hear anxiety and they think like, knot in stomach, weight on chest, racing thoughts. Yeah, that's anxiety. And there's more to it than that. And so you want your counselor to know the more to it than that piece. So if you feel like you're teaching your counselor on a consistent basis, might not be worth it. I mean, you might need to start looking somewhere else. The other piece is when your counselor has a bigger conceptual knowledge than you do, a bigger working lens of what's going on than you do, then they also know whether or not they can help. So if somebody comes in with something that's outside the scope of my practice or my competence, my responsibility is to say, hey, I cannot help you with this. Here's who can. Like, here's really what you need to do. And I'm going to walk you through that process. And maybe it's we're doing things at the same time where I say, let's stay working together, but why don't you also, you know, talk to this nutritionist, or why don't you also, maybe we'll talk about medication. Only psychiatrists and medical doctors can prescribe medication in Missouri. So no psychologist, no therapist, no social worker, none of us can prescribe stuff. We can diagnose, we cannot prescribe. And medication is a whole conversation. We would never say, you need to be on meds. We would say, is this something you want to talk about? And if you're on meds, we might say, cool, let's collaborate with your medical, you know, your providing or prescribing clinician, prescribing provider, something like that. So my point is that you want your clinician to have a bigger working knowledge of what's going on, because then they know when they need to refer you to somebody else or when they need to collaborate with somebody else for your treatment, period. And that is helpful. It might seem like overkill, but it's so helpful. Oh my goodness. There can be a huge difference between working collaboratively with a second party, both like tending to one thing, because you get multiple angles on the same problem, and it's just amazing. So the very, very last thing, I think maybe this goes without saying, but I feel like it's worth just mentioning. Counseling can be really hard to do. I say this to my couples frequently, and it seems so trite when I say it. It seems so sort of like flip. I mean it very sincerely. Talking is really hard to do. Legitimately, it's hard to do. It's one thing to think about something. It's one thing you're thinking about it all day. You're sort of like, I'm thinking about this thing, and I'm thinking about this thing, and it still keeps coming up in my mind, and I'm trying to make sense of it. But a lot of people, when they go to talk about the thing they've been thinking about, it's entirely different. I mean, the reality is you're using different parts of your brain, and so that's one thing. But, you know, someone like, for example, their parent, one of their parents is dying, and they think about it, and then they sit down and they talk about it and they start crying. They're like, I didn't expect myself to cry. You might get that. That's what I mean. Like, just the act of talking about stuff, saying it out loud can make it more real, can make it feel, it feels really overwhelming and scary. Ironically, it makes it more, what's the word I'm looking for? Manageable. There we go. It's more manageable whenever you talk about it, but the idea of talking about a thing can be terrifying for people. They'd much rather just not, like, no, thank you, I'll pass, we'll talk about this later. So all that to say, counseling can be difficult. That doesn't mean it's ineffective. That doesn't mean that it won't help. It's usually harder before it gets easier. And typically it's like the anticipation of it is more difficult than the actual act of. if that makes sense. So that, like, thinking about, oh God, I have to talk about this thing. That's the scary part. When you go to talk about it, most people feel relieved. They feel better. They feel like a weight has been lifted off their chest. They're excited. They're rejuvenated. They might be, you know, tear stained. Maybe it brought up some tears for them, or maybe they're feeling anger for the first time in 15 years, or regardless, it's difficult in its own way, but ultimately that, like, expunging, that, like, getting this stuff out of your system is good for you. So that's my answer. There is no short answer. I would say, yeah, hell yeah, counseling is effective, but that doesn't mean it's definitely going to work for you. Believe me, I don't know. I hope that it works for you. I think it can work for you, probably. And if not, then hopefully you have a fantastic clinician that says, hey, let's try this instead. That's why you need somebody who has an idea of what they're doing, that big conceptual, you know, the working knowledge piece and all that. So I'm going to end it right there. I'm really good at transition statements. So I'm abruptly ending this video because I think that's about it. That's all I have to say. If you have questions, make sure you let us know. You can reach out to us. You can contact me directly at Tara, T-A-R-A, at thecounselinghub.com. You can reach out to us just for general inquiries. I would say do that. You can reach out to us via our contact email, our client liaison email, which is contact@thecounselinghub.com. That's counseling with one L for the record. We do the North American style of spelling, not the European style. And if you have any other general questions, I mean, you can check out our website for anything. Yeah, you've probably already been on there if you're watching this video, but if you haven't been on there and you're somehow watching this video, check out the website to see what we do and who we serve and potentially how we can be of help. That's it. Good luck with counseling. I love it. As a clinician, I love it. As a client, I love it also, for the record. So a lot of counselors, if they don't, they should see their own counselor, see their own therapist, because it is a godsend. So in most cases. Okay. Have a good day, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.